Hey guys, Kinggath here with another episode of the Kinggath podcast. Today's guest is a relatively new mod author in the sense that he just got started with Fallout 4 and he's now the lead programmer for Fallout Miami. Welcome, Systoliker.
Hey, nice to be here. Thank you for the nice introduction, and well, I'm looking forward for this podcast.
Yeah, me too. So the one of the things that came up when we were chatting before we came on is the fact that you got started to Fallout 4 modding because of the Sim Settlements toolkit. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's actually the case. Before Fallout 4, I was relatively new in Skyrim. I started doing a own little project for private purposes, and with that I applied to Beyond Skyrim. And yeah, then I was in the Beyond Skyrim team for a while, and then uh, yeah, after that some settlements came up for Fallout 4, and I was only playing vanilla the whole time because I wanted to keep my game pure in quotes. And then where I saw the mod some settlements in a GameStar video, that's a German magazine
Uh-huh.
for video games, I was like, oh my gosh, this mod looks so awesome, and it finally offers me the opportunity I looked for, because I was heavily into settlement building and I don't like setting up only like one room with 20 beds and
Yeah,
yeah.
that was my exact
And
pitch too. Is like everybody just builds these bunkhouses full of beds and nobody bothers to
yeah.
make nice things.
Yeah, and then actually I downloaded the mod. I really liked it, and then I watched your video where you were doing tutorials how to um, add new stuff to add-ons and so on. Then I tried this, and I noticed that my level design skills are terrible, and I mean terrible. And yeah, what I tried to do back in the day, maybe I will do it in the future after I finished my current projects, but that was like also related to NukaWorld, like my current own mod project NukaWorld Plus. However, the idea was like that you have like slave markets where you can purchase them and stuff, but yeah, that got me then into programming, and with that my skill was increasing slowly over the time.
Yeah. So now are you a programmer in like real life and doing other things, or did you just learn it for modding?
No, actually, I started in school with computer science, with a language probably no one knows because it's so old, Free Pascal, and I was doing like a text RPG, which was like really funny because I had to do everything with characters. Like every single build is built up with with I's and O's and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, that was like the first thing I got into contact with programming. Creation Kit was then a little bit later, as I said, with Skyrim. I also have to admit that I first got my hands on Skyrim in 2016, so
Oh
pretty
wow.
late.
Yeah, latecomer. Oh, the last person I talked to still has not played Skyrim, which I was like, how do you even avoid that anymore? They've got it on everything.
Yeah, but yeah, it was also my first Bethesda game. Before that, I wasn't playing role play games at all,
Ah, really?
because
What
I
was
was
your?
mostly like, yeah, actually I was a lot into Assassin's Creed because I like history and stuff,
Sure.
and yeah, then the Batman Arkham series was like, yeah, like in general action stealth. That was more my kind of genre.
I love both of those
With
series, but both of them I got burned out on because they released them too quickly.
yeah, okay, that Batman less I would say, but Assassin's Creed, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think I
I
made it
lost.
through the first four. I think by the time when they got to the pirate one, I was just done. I was just like, I've had enough. Like you guys got me for a game. You guys got me for $60 every year for the past 5 years. That's enough.
Yeah. I actually played every single game.
Okay.
I'm currently still on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Since I started modding, I have less time for playing actually, because
Sure.
the most stuff I do is like play testing,
Yeah.
if everything is working, and otherwise like playing with friends some multiplayer games, and that's mostly it. Unfortunately, um, I would love to play more single player games, but yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the modder's curse is you as you become more into modding, and I've heard that actual game developers have this too, is that you start to become a casual gamer over time because you just have
Yeah.
you either don't have enough time or the time you do have you just kind of want to pursue your passion projects, and it's like, all right, well, I could go play somebody else's game or I could work on my own.
Yeah, that's actually the case for me as well. Before that, I was like starting, actually, before I started modding, I was starting getting into more deep roleplay. For example, I started playing the first Fallout
Oh,
and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and stuff, like really hardcore roleplay games. But since I got into modding, I just don't have the time
yeah.
for that.
Yeah, it's kind of a tragedy because I think slowly over time we start disconnecting from the games, like of like what makes games great because we don't play enough of
Mm.
them anymore. But and so I think that's a balance you got to find. That's why I've started playing on YouTube just because I'm like I don't make any time for gaming otherwise, and like I don't want to. If I go away for too long, I'm gonna start making weird stuff nobody wants.
Yeah, what I actually do is, if I'm talking with friends and aren't able to play, and then I just, while I'm hanging out, I play single player games. And yeah, that's like the way I do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I have holidays, I force me to play. For example, one of my favorite RPGs at the moment, Kingdom Come Deliverance. And
Ah,
if
okay.
I start playing them, then I stop modding for this time and completely, um, yeah, rush through those games.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so hard to like fight yourself on that.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of part of the territory though. Like I think if you're the type that has a personality that can handle modding, I think it tends to require kind of an obsessive personality. You have to be willing to get like just hardcore obsessed with things. And so I think we all do that with our games too. So then we know if we do it with a game, then we're gonna break free of modding. So it's kind of like you must have to like keep the games at arm's length just to prevent getting addicted to them.
Yeah, that's true. And well, I mean, I hope at some day, if I maybe finish the one project or the other one, I will be able to get back to play single player games more recently. But for the moment,
Yeah.
yeah,
The nice thing about it, what I keep looking at it is by the time I'm ready to take a break and go hardcore gamer again, there's going to be like amazing games I skipped that I can go back through and play. Like there'll be no
yeah.
shortage of awesome stuff to catch up on.
I mean, as I mentioned before, one of them would be, I would advise you Kingdom Come Deliverance, since as I mentioned before, I'm a great history fan and I got really huge RPG fan, and this game's combining both in a really nice way.
Yeah. I haven't played that. I've watched people play it. It looks really good. Looks really well
Yeah.
designed, and it looks hard too, which is pretty rare anymore in any games.
It okay, at the beginning it is really hard, but if you like progress in the game, it gets a little bit too easy in my opinion. It still is challenging later on in the game if you fight against 5 or 6 enemies,
Yeah.
but the magic of the beginning, I would say, is like, yeah, the game loses this a bit because in my opinion you progress too not too fast. The progress curve is really nice,
Okay.
but too strong, I would say.
Ah, okay. So you like there's power jumps in there.
No, that's not the point. It's just like, um at the beginning, for example, the combat system is really skilled and you have to concentrate, and every single fight feels like a really fight for your life, and it is really challenging. And then like later in the game you're just like slaying the enemies for like 5 minutes and then they are all dead.
Ah, okay. So it's just like
Yeah.
like quicker kills and stuff as you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, it's one on my list for like if I ever have way more time, I want to go back and play that one because it looks really good. I hear lots of good things about it. So let's talk about your mods. So you did. So I think you said you used this. This is the mod you used to apply to work on Fallout Miami, and that is NukaWorld Plus. And
Right.
so that mod, I've had this on my list for a while to check out because you're doing. I want to say something kind of like Conqueror in the sense of like doing wave based attacks, and it's like an
Right.
overhaul of their assault system.
In general, what I aim with NukaWorld Plus is like making the game exciting even after you completed open season. And the way I'm doing this is like adding looping systems that allow the raiders to attack NukaWorld and try to reclaim it. So um, the thing with those assaults on NukaWorld Town USR, at the moment you can just it just working for Nuka Town USR. I will expanding it in the future, but like that's in the current version of it. Um, the raiders can attack, and if you aren't cautious enough, they can reclaim the park and enslave everyone again, and then you have to take it back from them. There's actually a quest which I call then open season again, and yeah. But to make things a little bit easier for the player, you can also go to Nuka Town USR, host the flag for one of the main game factions. The scripts are catching if you are in the factions or not.
Okay.
So either the Minutemen, the Railroad, the Brotherhood of Steel, or the Institute. And then if you did that and claimed the park for one of those factions, they will be roaming around there, and the traders will like have patches on their racks that show from which faction they actually are.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
currently I work on a version that makes the mod way more stable since it was my first mod for Fallout.
Mm-hmm.
I messed up a lot in the code, like used while loops where they shouldn't be.
Ah, yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah, 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 and now I cleaned the code completely up. Got rid of every single um, messy code, created custom events so it gets handled more well and more stable. And yeah, what I actually also did is add a new system that the player can actually be enslaved, and that will be there as well. Because if the player loses, the attack and the raiders reclaim the park, and then the health gets below 50% or the wave cap gets reached, the player surrenders. That's with a little animation where the player gets on his knees and raises his hands,
Yeah.
and then he wears gets teleported to the market and wears a collar
Oh
and a
man.
slave rack.
Ah.
The collar actually works
Okay.
if the player um, leaves Nuka World. The idea was like he needs to roam around and explore Nuka World to get stuff back to be able to kill the new overboss. So the slave collar works like that. If you leave Nuka World, you will get a warning message, and after 20 seconds, boom. Um, but it doesn't has to be this way. If the player has a high enough intelligence, he can disarm it.
Okay.
Or if he kills the overboss, then he gets a disarm key for the slave collar.
That sounds like a
And
really good immersion mod.
yeah, that's like one of the most important things for me, and I'm a kind of a perfectionist in those kinds of things. Everything for me has to be make sense, and yeah, that's the reason I'm really going really detailed
Yeah.
into those kind of stuff.
Well, that's awesome. Well, that explains also why you would get obsessive over your code. If
Yeah,
you look back at it, if you're a perfectionist, then it's hard to look back at
yeah,
that. I have that problem with some settlements. As I look back at the old code when I was just kind of learning how all this stuff worked, and I look back at it now, I'm like, what an idiot! What moron wrote that?
yeah. But I mean, that is happening. Also, if you work straight on something, then you maybe miss something. Or if you then interact with other modders, and I'm really grateful. That's the reason I'm really grateful being in Fallout Miami, because I interact with other programmers, and then like we talk, and then they say, hey, did you know you can do this? And I say, no, I didn't know that, but thank you for the information. But did you know you can do this? And he says then, no, I didn't, but that's awesome to know. And then you learn a lot of new things much more quicker.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's also the reason, if you then look back, you see, yeah, well, I could just do it that way, and it is like 5 lines less in the code.
Which is, it turns out, is really important in this game because the VM for
Yeah.
Papyrus, while it's impressive, it's still kind of slow. So
Yeah.
anytime you can chop out lines is definitely worth it. So how many people do you work with on Miami as far as programmers? How many different programmers are there?
I mean, my programming department is small, but they are really talented and really great. Like, we are, with me together, we are 5 people at the moment.
Okay.
But every single one of them is like doing great work, and they are so fast. That's incredible. I mean, one of them is the white collar players. You talk with him on your channel. I saw that
Yeah.
yesterday. That, yeah, he's like doing a great job as well. And then we have Daifem, who's just awesome, and he's so experienced. And yeah, then we have like 2 new people who are also getting fresh into modding, and it's really nice to see on them how they progress further and develop their own skills in
Yeah.
general.
I love working with new people who are passionate about it. It's great to be
Yeah.
able to help teach and share some of the stuff I've learned and like watch them grow. It's really cool. So it's
I mean it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say. So it sounds like you've got that going on too.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing, I mean, I feel actually great if I can teach other people what I've learned in the past, because it shows myself how I progressed um, in past by myself, and that's actually really nice to see. Then yeah, to grow together in this team, I
Sure.
would say.
So what? So you're the lead on it. So you kind of
Yes.
pass out the tasks to the other four.
Yeah, I set up some rules how to commenting the code, and of course, like assigning tasks and stuff is also my role, and talking with recruits and people that apply to Fallout Miami. That is something I do also, because what I try, since programming is not that popular department for people to apply, that I talk with everyone individual and ask them, yeah, what kind of experience do you have there and stuff. And then I also look like for tasks that are fitting for those persons, so they don't get frustrated. Because if you have a programmer that is really into quest modding and he really loves to do quests, and then I say to him, yeah, well, you should do faction implementation or do a crime system, then he would like being frustrated really fast, I guess.
Sure.
But yeah,
So
or
now,
do nav
so
mesh.
it sounds like because I'm curious about with Miami. So for the type of programming you do, you clearly enjoy designing systems. You said you've built old
Yeah,
text-based games. Your Nuka Town or sorry, NukaWorld Plus
yeah.
is very much a systems game. Is that kind of what you're doing for Miami, or do you actually are you handling more of the
Yes.
quest implementation?
I mean, actually, I was working only on systems yet. I implemented a reputation system for Fallout Miami that is working like Fallout New Vegas one, but I made it more the way Fallout 4 works, so it's fitting more, like the interface is fitting more to Fallout 4's one. Then it's like not a recreation of Fallout New Vegas reputation system. It's a reputation system reimagined for Fallout 4. So
Okay.
yeah, then I made a crime system since I don't really know why, but crimes factions in Fallout are not working. They are in the creation kit, but that's more like something that was left from Skyrim. So also there I was then the first one who said if we do it completely new, uh, let's expand this one. So for example, we in Fallout Miami will featuring a crime system with actually NPCs and quests in the jail and daily tasks the player has to do, because if if yeah, as I mentioned before, immersion is like one of the most important things to me, and if I have the opportunity to expand something or make something more ambitious or make something more deep, then I'm the first one who is like going to do this.
So you're a
But
professional feature creeper.
kind of, yeah. But to your question with Quest implementation, I actually have no problem in doing quests. I'm also working for this on NukaWorld Plus since I don't want end
On your
there
NukaWorld
by
Plus stuff.
having those
So
systems. I actually
the
want
crime
to
system you
implement
mentioned is
a
interesting because yeah,
main
they
quest line for
have
each
like
faction
some
for
of
the
it
Minutemen
works, like
Brotherhood.
the forcing
Yeah,
them to it, like they'll attack you and stuff in Fallout 4, but that's about it. But yeah, it looks like
yeah,
they have the hooks in there for the jail and stuff, and they just don't use any of it.
yeah. I I don't know why they. I mean, for example, the function send player to jail just does nothing or makes the game crash most of the time. I have no idea what Bethesda was thinking of
There's a
that
couple of
line
them in
to
there
get
that are a
across.
little
Yeah.
disappointing. Like there's the tether cart to horse function is still in there and doesn't do anything. And it's like, no, I wanted to have
Yeah.
Brahmin wagons. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
there's quite a few on the creation kit site. You find them and you're like, oh, that could be cool, and then you go to play with it and it's like, oh,
It
disappointing.
doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
It just sometimes the things just doesn't work.
But
Yeah.
the having the quests and stuff in jail and the fact that you're doing something sounds like similar to NukaWorld Plus seems like the perfect thing for some of the stuff I do know about Miami because you guys are doing a slaver faction. So it seems absolutely
Yes.
perfect and
Yes.
thematic for that to have the type of gameplay you like in there.
Yeah, but the slaver system is just a different. I mean, actually, what I did is like giving the code to White Collar as inspiration from NukaWorld Plus for the shock collar, and yeah, that actually worked well. He was just then able to modify it and bring it to work for Fallout Miami since that are still two different visions um, that has nothing to do with each other.
Okay.
But back to your question, actually, the crime system is a thing for one faction because it's a faction specific thing for the center, and the slave system is like then for another faction. So we will feature um, different systems for um, certain factions. So they are all faction specific. So the factions will not only feel special because of their quests, but also because of their culture and systems that they will offer the player.
Oh, that's awesome. So are there
Yeah.
any so those are two of the systems you've designed, and then so now you do also the quest implementation. Now, do you guys on I've been curious about how you guys organize Miami because taking on those big projects, like especially a world space like that, is such a magnitude larger than what most mods cover. And I can imagine how difficult it is to organize a team to work on a vision like that. So I'm curious about when you guys do your programmers, when you break them up, is your little programming squad, your 5 guys, in charge of all Papyrus, or do you guys have like level editors that will do little bits of scripting and you guys just take care of the hard stuff, or how do you break up the workload like that?
Actually, we take care of everything related to scripting.
Okay.
Really everything. We also will do some level design stuff in the future, since level design has not that much members, because we will then do like nav meshing, because that's like just a time consuming thing. It's like nothing really, really hard.
Yeah.
But with the organization, Fallout Miami is like having or had troubles with organization as well, since I think every huge project will have struggles or had struggles with that.
Absolutely.
But we are getting closer to fix everything, and the communication itself is well, since they are most of the people, or I would say all people, are like open-minded and nice to talk with. And yeah, if there should be a programmer or a level designer who isn't aware of every single piece of writing that isn't actually a problem, he can just go and ask, and then everyone who knows it will then reply and say, yeah, that was that and that way. And yeah, so yeah, there were some issues, but we are on the good way to fix those.
Yeah, I think that's just part of the nature of organizing big teams. I mean,
Yeah.
even major companies go through this where they have trouble. I mean, I've heard lots of stories recently from big game dev studios like BioWare, who, according to rumors, the problems they had with Anthem were because they had trouble communicating among their own team, and it's like they're all getting paid and they're professionals. So, like, of course, then when you go to the mod level where everyone's volunteer, that those issues are going to be likely magnified. So. It's not unsurprising that every team would have issues like that. What I'm curious about is just what your personal strategy is for divvying up programming work, because from my experience, it's always a tough transition to go from a programmer working by yourself to working with a group, because it tends to be that each programmer has their own style and they don't necessarily mesh perfectly with other people's styles, and then so you gotta figure out that gap and how you bridge it.
Yeah, actually, that was something I mentioned before, and I can send you here an example script, because of this reason I set up some rules. So
Oh.
we are like having at least one line we can orient on. And of course, everyone has his own style, and that is fine.
Yeah.
But that is the reason I set it up, that you actually declare your name and the first date you wrote the script and the last date, and then if someone is editing it, he should. I mean, you can take a look into it. I just sent it to you
Yeah,
via
yeah, I've got it
Discord.
open right now, but that's not going to be super useful to people listening. So
Yeah.
we'll try
Yeah,
and
yeah.
describe it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, however, that is like, I think it's helping a lot, and otherwise it's just like a thing of having a constant dialogue with everyone. I mean, that's a great thing that we are like 5 people in my department. We are mostly talking all together and are aware of each other, what he's doing, and so that isn't a problem. That's just working really fine.
Yeah.
And it's also, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
that's
mean,
it's always a chance, but I like what you did here. We did something similar to this where we've got kind of a template and we ask everybody to follow that, so that way we all at least have something similar in structure, so we can kind of follow that with the scripts. And I've actually released for anybody interested in a template for doing questing and stuff. I tend to post that stuff on the Sim Settlements forum, so those of you guys listening who are interested in programming quests and stuff, we've got some of that stuff available for free on the forums you can check out. But it's always a struggle. Even once you post, you give your guidelines and stuff, it can be still a challenge. But it's, like you said, with a small team like that, you can constantly communicate, so you can keep it from getting out of control. Whereas I could see, like if you work in the corporate world, where you might be on a project with dozens of people, it can get kind of frustrating.
yeah. I mean, I also have to mention what was really important to me. I asked them, "Are you fine with those rules, or do you have any adjustments?" Because if I just set up the rules that are related to my programming style, that wouldn't be helpful. So we were discussing together the rules out, and then said, okay, that is now our basic foundation, and that is the way we will program in the future.
Yeah, and the guidelines like that in this document are pretty pretty light. It's basically how do you group up your properties
Yeah.
so we can find them, and I assume things like don't use magic numbers and some of the basic programming principles are kind of what you guys
Exactly.
agree on. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. So you guys
Yeah.
so you're handling all the scripting. So it's basically your level editors are just building the spaces, and then you guys are going to handle things like any of the quest triggers and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, like, they give us the playground, and or we could describe it like that. Um, they give us the land, and we build the house on it. So they do all the level design work, set up the lighting and the clutter and stuff, and all trigger boxes and X markers and stuff. That's then a thing for us to use and to do.
Okay.
So actually everything you can't see in the game.
Right, all the invisible stuff. That's what you guys are in charge of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. That's it's interesting that there's a bunch of different ways you can go about it. Because the way Bethesda I know goes about it is they have little squads that they will have like one guy who's okay at programming, and then they'll have like an artist, and like they'll do
Yeah.
little squads, and they'll all work together and divvy up content. And you can see like there's a massive difference in quality between chunks of content you find throughout the game. Like one quest is like, oh, this is organized nicely, and another one is like, this guy has done this never before. Like,
That actually reminds me of a funny story, because as we were setting up the rules, going through vanilla scripts to look how Bethesda did it. So we took this as a foundation.
okay.
And then we actually recognized that they seem to be having no rule set for scripting, since ones are like written super good
Yeah.
and other ones are like so poorly. And the funniest part of this was like actually like the weirdest scripts are written by Todd Howard himself. That actually killed me so hard as I recognized that.
Oh, dude, that's funny. Yeah, once in a while you look at some of the scripts with us included, and they look like they were pulled up. They were made by a decompiler. Like they're just like, wow, that is
Yeah.
very literal. You guys went with your coding there.
Yeah, but that was actually interesting, and then at the end we were just like, nice, that didn't help us at all.
Wasted exercise. We're not going to use that at all.
Yeah, we just used then one script that was actually really well written. I forgot what the name was, but I think it was a workshop script, and that was then our foundation to go with, to say that is the foundation for our rule set.
Okay. Yeah, the workshop scripts are they've got a few issues with them, but they're you can tell they're at least written by somebody pretty experienced that did them
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
Written by a programmer, not by a level designer. or game
Right,
designer.
right. Yeah, I find the fragment thing to be very offensive as a programmer. I hate those so much that they exist. But I see why they built them, because if you're giving level designers programming advice, you want them to have to do as little as possible.
But well, actually they kind of fixed it in the scenes, because you can directly go to set stage and not using fragments at all.
Yeah, I know, it's
So-
wonderful.
That's an improvement. Also, in general, a lot of people are shitting on the creation kit of Fallout 4, but like, I was a Skyrim modder at the beginning, and I can say Fallout 4's creation kit is such an improvement.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
if it crashes sometimes and it has its issues, but like creating SEQ files all the time. Then I had like so many issues. For example, I set up a reference alias,
Uh-huh.
then I filled it, and then I was like changing it a bit. Like, I moved the actor, and for some reason he got then like kicked out of the reference alias, and I had to refill him again. Where I just asked myself like, what the fuck? Why?
Yeah, this is a Skyrim issue he's talking about. In Fallout, it actually works. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that I have no problems with the creation kit, other than the fact that well, that's not true. I have problems with the crashing, and also some of the screens are unnecessarily slow. Like, I think they need a better
Yeah.
database programmer on their squad. But yeah, it's massively impressive over Skyrim's creation kit for
Yeah.
sure.
it's so much more comfortable. Also, in general, for example, I love ref collection aliases. They are such an improvement to modding, in my opinion.
Oh, so you don't want to have 400 reference aliases individual?
No, no, actually no. I mean, what I don't get, like in Skyrim, it would be actually fit more since you have like the Imperial and the Stormcloaks who fight each other, and you could set up huge battles and stuff.
Yeah.
But well, in Fallout that is actually possible, and for example in NukaWorld Plus I use that a lot, or in the crime system I used it a lot, so that I use ref collection aliases and then set like find matching reference, and then it catches everyone who could be a witness of players' crimes, and that actually makes so much easier and better.
Yeah. It's
So
really
that
powerful. It's
is,
really, yeah, it's a lot
yeah.
of fun to have that access to that system. I've looked into some of the way Bethesda has used it, and they use it a lot more than I was comfortable using it at first. Like they tend to fire off little tiny quest events to grab people all the time throughout the game, and it's just like
Yeah.
constantly they're using it for things. For example, whenever you like when you pickpocket, it fires off an event that's assault to find people nearby who could see it, and it's like, oh, you can use it for that tiny little stuff. So
Yeah.
they really abuse that system, and which makes me feel comfortable then using it for a lot. So they must. I assume they have it fairly well optimized because I've never had hiccups in those types of systems in the game while playing.
I mean, what I actually recognize, it's better optimized and better working than reference alias. For example, I just recognized today that the reference aliases have a bug that if you apply the same script in the same quest on 3 different reference aliases, it will only compile 1 time and it will fail 2 times
Oh, that's weird.
for some, I don't know. But if you use ref collection aliases and say the amount is 1, so it's like the same, and then you apply the same scripts to 3 different ref collection, then it compiles fine. So it's actually better working than reference aliases.
Oh, that's bizarre. Yeah, there every once in a while
Yeah.
you run across something that doesn't make any sense, and those are the things I think us who mod a lot have the right to nitpick over the creation kit. I think a lot of the community outrage over it is just they don't understand that most game engines are the same way as the creation engine, which is that they're iterated versions from companies. It's just that other companies tend to completely rebrand. Like they'll be like, this is the this is the whatever version of Cryotech engine or whatever. They like
Yeah.
they don't get as much
Unity
flack
1,
for it.
Unity
Right, exactly.
2.
Unity 1, 2,
Yeah.
etc. Whereas the creation engine is just always the creation engine.
Yeah. I mean, if they would call it Creation Engine 2, everyone would be happy, I guess.
Well, I think people would argue that if they had less buggy games, but I would argue their games are way more systemized than everybody else's.
Like, I would say the problem, or like Bethesda is sometimes more ambitious than they should be, because they are doing a lot in their games and they create really open systems.
Mhm.
And the systems are so open that other developers like from Ubisoft or EA wouldn't even try that to do. And if you do such open systems, then you easily, yeah, caught more issues.
Right, because you don't,
And
especially when you let modders get involved, because we get to take all those different systems
yeah,
and try and connect them in ways maybe they weren't designed to. So we can really make it nasty. But also even their individual teams, the fact that they have little squads where they've got unexperienced programmers doing things, like that all adds together to make for
yeah,
a pretty messy experience sometimes.
yeah. But I mean, what I recognized on the E3 yesterday, by the way, where we start talking about this, that actually a lot of people in Bethesda are there since ever. Because, for example, there was like one guy who said, "Yeah, I was really getting in touch with Bethesda with Daggerfall," which is like insane. So they have like developers since ever there, and I think that's also a thing because those developers are used to the engine and stuff from 10 years ago.
Right. Oh,
which
longer
isn't
than
a
that
bad
if you're talking
thing.
about
Yeah.
Daggerfall.
Yeah, or 20 years. Or
All right.
however, my point is just like, for example, in Ubisoft, they have like only like new members, and switching the personnel all the time,
Right.
and yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I think that's it's got to be. I mean, it would be very hard for them to reinvent the wheel at Bethesda, like if they've got a lot of the same people. But I would also say that's probably also why we have some silly bugs, is because their whole team has just gotten used to them, so they never bother to fix them. Because I'm guilty of that, where I have like bugs in my own software where I'm like, oh, I just know how to work around it, and so it's like it'll take me
yeah.
20 hours to fix it or 3 seconds to do things differently, and it results in a silly bug that I could fix. I just don't want to take the time to do it, and I bet there's a lot of that going on.
I mean, what I also read a lot is like, yeah, Bethesda, they rely on their community that they fix the bugs for them because they are lazy as fuck and stuff. But what I actually have to say all the time again is like, we can be grateful that the community is allowed and is able to fix them. Because, for example, if any other publisher publishes a game and it's buggy, then you're just like, you have to accept that it is buggy
Right.
until the developer itself fixes it. And the fact that you can turn things into your own hands and say, hey, I want to fix this now because it bothers me, that's actually something I really appreciate on Bethesda, and I hope they will keep doing it in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I really hope that they don't get turned away from the idea of supporting mods ever, which maybe could happen. I don't know. I think it depends on where the market goes, and as far as like, does it add any value? Like, I know they bragged about the fact that there have been some like 3 billion downloads or something of mods since they launched the mod system for Skyrim Special Edition and Fallout 4 in the E3 presentation. So I think that was a signal to be like, hey, we love supporting mods and we weren't going to continue doing it. Otherwise, I don't think they would bother mentioning it.
I mean, also if other people would claim something else, but for example, Fallout 76 is a bright example that Bethesda show or tries to show that their community is important to them. Because I was playing the game in beta and at release, and I was like heavily disappointed, to be honest. But after a few time, I got back into the game and it got already improved a lot. And I was reading some articles, and what I actually was surprised of was that they actually listened like really to their community and were actually implementing things that were suggested by the community since launch.
Yeah.
And also that they didn't give up after those awful reviews is something that makes me happy to see. And also know that they announced to feature human NPCs with full dialogue branches. Oh my gosh, that will be great. I hope so much that they will announce next year then that they are featuring private servers and modding, because with the dialogue branches and stuff like that, and private servers, plus the opportunity to mod your Fallout 76, that would be so great.
Yeah.
To be able to install mods, maybe also questing mods and stuff, and play them with your friends. Like, just the imagination to you create a mod and then you say, hey, I create this mod, let's play it, let's try it out. That would be so great, in my opinion.
Absolutely. That's what I was hoping for originally. It's such a weird situation with that because, in my opinion, like, so it sounds like you two were disappointed by the lack of NPCs. That was my biggest complaint about that game, is I felt if the game felt pointless without any NPCs to me.
That wasn't actually my biggest complaint. I actually was fine with that, since you have human NPCs, not human, I'm sorry, I mean like NPCs with dialogue, like robots and some super mutants and stuff. And that wasn't the problem. The problem I had with the game was like technical issues. For example, I fall through the ground, my inventory got cleared 3 times.
Oh my god. That's
completely.
the only bugs I had technically were I got disconnected all the time. So I probably just
I
was never able to stay on long
yeah.
enough to have those other bugs happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah, most probably. I had like in total 7 quests I couldn't complete
Oh man.
since it was just broken. Like, for example, I had to deliver something and I had it in the inventory, and then my inventory got cleared, but I didn't receive the stuff back, so I
Oh.
wasn't able to finish this quest. Or another bug was just like I had to talk with an NPC, but the NPC didn't talk to me. He just like was flying, and I tried to interact. He didn't react it, and then he actually started fighting me off, and I was like, "What the fuck? What is just happening here?"
uh,
And that was the reason I took a break from the game, and I got like recently back because some friends of mine got the game also and
okay.
asked me then to play, and I say, "All right, let's get it." And yeah, from a technical perspective, it's way better, and from a feature perspective, it's also way better.
Oh, that's good.
And I hope so much that they will do the Wastelanders update right, and NPCs will have some exciting stories.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that was one of the, well, like I said already, that was the big thing that was listening to me. I think it was personally, I think it was a mistake that they didn't do that as their first, like the initial
Yeah.
launch, just because so many people who were coming from the single player Fallouts, which is all of us who are fans of Fallout, came from the single player.
Yeah.
You would think you would try and if your plan was to do NPCs in the long run anyway, then why wouldn't you do that initially to make sure that all your single player fans were happy? Because then, like I have trouble. One of the problems I have with the way game development goes now is that they do stuff like this where they release a game knowing they'll fix it long term, and the problem is for a lot of people when they have that bad first impression, it's like, all right, well now I'm done with it. There's too many other choices, so I think that there's a lot of people who are never going to come back, and like they wasted their initial excitement on that. Like even myself, I was really excited for the idea of 76 of like, okay, this could be really amazing to be able to play through a Fallout game with friends, and then in reality it just fell flat for me, and now I just don't care. Like now I'm done with the game and I don't care anymore. So like even when that update comes out, it's going to be a tough sell to get me to go back in. Like I don't know what it's going to take or like if I'll even bother. And I think there are probably a lot of people in that same boat who are just like they were so turned off initially that now it's kind of like, oh, too little, too late, Bethesda. Like, I'm glad you did. Like, I just don't understand why they decided to wait. It seems like a weird decision to make.
Yeah. Yeah, they should have delayed the game by 1 year, actually, in my opinion, and then just because I think they just didn't include all NPCs because otherwise they wouldn't be able to finish the game. Because the like making the creation kit working in an online infrastructure was a huge challenge for them, I would suppose.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, you can see this in the game that they had huge problems with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is like the reason, in my opinion, they should have delayed it November this year.
Yeah.
And then with NPCs
Oh yeah.
from the start.
I mean, I'm kind of glad they didn't in a sense because I think a lot of projects like ours and your guys's would probably have been in trouble if all of a sudden we were competing directly with Bethesda for story mods. But now because so many people are like, nope, to hell with that game. Now we have a large audience who are going to stick with Fallout 4 for a long time.
Yeah, but what I have to say that was something that actually bothered me last year was like that a lot of people in the community were like starting to make those projects for Fallout 4 um, like putting into a position that we would compete with Fallout 76. And the thing is, it bothers me in a way that I wouldn't say we are working on Fallout Miami or on Fallout 4 New Vegas because we want to compete with Bethesda or anything. We just working on it to having fun and because we love Fallout and we actually love the work of Bethesda and what they created. So that was the first thing that bothered me, and also was like that I got the feeling that some mod projects got overhyped in a way they were talked about like a lot of people actually thought who were coming onto the Fallout Miami community server that we are doing our own game. Like, that isn't a mod. Like, there were people who actually asked me, yeah, why aren't you doing Fallout Miami in Unreal Engine 4? And I was like, first of all, that's not allowed license-wise, and second, we are a mod. We
Right.
are not like, you know, a fan project in a way that's like a Star Wars Battlefront 3, for example.
Right. Yeah, you are actually doing this because of your love for the game franchise and for Bethesda,
Yeah.
not in
Yeah.
not in spite of them. And when I say in competition with, I don't know, I'm not saying it in the negative sense of being in competition as against them. It's more in the terms of like you're always competing. Like everybody in the creative space in the world right now, this is a big problem in the current era of entertainment, is that everybody like film, television, video games, we're all competing for people's attention, and like it's a big, like, having to go, at least if we're the only ones operating in the Fallout space, we at least in that type of experience, which is this weird, the post-apocalypse plus humor, plus that 1950s spin. Like, it's a very specific experience that people like, and you can kind of operate without competition in that space until now. Bethesda, if they're releasing constant story updates, then obviously that makes it a little harder to get people's attention, because it's not exciting to go play a mod that's going to be probably less polished and more buggy than a professional version of that same exact experience.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, in general, like with fan projects, that they will take some while, since we are all doing this in our free time. We have work or school as well. And that was also a thing why I mentioned I don't like the idea to compete against the Fallout 76, because that would like create too much, like that you have the feeling you have to compete against it, and you have to deliver, and you have to be better than the game, because that is what the community of the mod is expecting from you, and that is what I meant with that.
So you just don't want to have to deal with the pressure of feeling like you've got to develop like better than a AAA studio.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
because that's not realistic.
Yeah, right. Because that is actually what happened, that like a lot of people were thinking like that. I mean, we put everything we have into this mod, so like we have super skilled 3D artists, and as I said, all my programmers are really talented as well. But I wouldn't think like that we are doing a better job than Bethesda does.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not in quality-wise, but for example, if there wouldn't be a Fallout 4, there would be no Fallout Miami.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Because we need this game to build on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's awesome to build on it, because you get to just do the fun parts. Like, you get to just design new systems. You don't have to worry about like figuring out all the finickiness of like gravity and making a gun feel nice. Like all that stuff, that mechanical physics stuff, has all been solved for us. So now we get to just like do the fun high level stuff.
That's like polishing.
Right. Yeah, some of it so like you mentioned nav meshing earlier. I actually find stuff like that to be kind of therapeutic. It's like meditating. Like it's like people who do like the Zen gardening, It's like it's very repetitive and mindless work, but you know what? There's something a little bit relaxing about that kind of stuff once in a while.
Yeah, well, but the thing actually in my programming department, which contains myself as well, is like we don't like easy stuff. We wanna have a challenge actually.
Sure.
Because that's more fun if you have to figure out stuff and work out. Because that's the thing I love on programming so much. It's the most frustrating thing and the most satisfying thing at the same moment.
Yeah.
As long it doesn't work, it's so frustrating. But then you find this one mistake, this one function that solves everything, and it's so satisfying if you see it working in the game.
This is, yes, you are absolutely correct. I think anybody out there who, like, if you watched us, you would think we were like there was something wrong with our brains. But this is a common story in programmers, and especially, and I've had multiple conversations about this with people in modding, where we will get obsessed with a problem, and we literally put in like 15 hours on it, and then all of a sudden we solve it. It was a small mistake we made early on, and it just feels like we just ran a marathon. Like we just won. We won a medal, and we feel so proud. And then if you would watch it from the outside, be like, but you were so angry for 15 hours. And it's like, yeah, it was all worth it.
But it was worth it. Yeah,
Right.
that's the point. And watch is actually showing you that it was worth it, because next time you face the same problem,
Yeah.
you don't need 15 hours, but like 5 minutes.
Not only do you not need 15 hours, but you never forget those 15 hours. So that solution, you always have it ready to go.
And yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely
such a
the
great
more rewarding side of programming. But there's also one of the things that's a thing I like to make sure people who try and get into modding understand is that a large portion of modding is just like the crappy work, is the like the nav meshing and like the stuff where there's all these steps you have to do, and somebody on the team has to do them, where it's just going to be 50, 100 hours of like just repetitive labor. And like if you want to do a really good polished big project, that's gonna be required. And I find the best thing to do is always to break things up, to just be like, do a little bit of that at a time, and make sure you interweave those exciting stuff like the bashing your head against hard problems, and like mix that in and out with some of the more boring stuff. Like you have to do all of it if you want to actually make a released thing that people can play.
Yeah, actually, the repetitive stuff, I do that after I had school, or if I have not that much time in general, because, as you said, you don't need to think too much. Just like, I just put on Spotify and then let's start nav meshing.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's the only time I ever get to catch up on TV shows is when I'm doing those types of projects. Like, because I just watch them in the corner of my eye. Like I was 2 seasons behind Game of Thrones when the last season came out, and I was like, all right, well, I got some simple work I can do. Like, just kick that on in the background. But programming and watching television for me is never going to happen at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, I can say I don't watch television at all.
Okay.
I mean, for example, where you mentioned Game of Thrones, I never saw any season of Game of Thrones. I read the first book. I didn't find it that exciting. I know a lot of people will be mad now, but
Well, a lot of people are very pissed off about the finale, so I think they're like crapping on the whole show now. But it's a huge like cultural phenomenon in the United States. I think mostly just because it got so many like normal people into fantasy that it was exciting to see.
I mean, in Germany, it's a huge hype as well, but actually, like my friends and I, we are more like old school, the Lord of the Rings people, like Tolkien and his world is like my kind of cup, actually.
That's
more than Game of Thrones.
Well, it's shocking that it took you so long to play a Bethesda game then, because like their original stuff before Skyrim. I guess Morrowind's the first game they kind of started to get their own voice, but prior to that, all of their stuff was just like generic high fantasy rip-off token type things. So like that's what their games were.
Yeah, actually it was not even it was just an accident that I got Skyrim. It was like Steam sale.
Yeah.
And I said like, hey, this game looks nice, because in our local Technic store we have this Dovahkiin statue in living tall. Like it's one.
Oh, it's like a life size
50,
1:1.
160. Yeah, life size. That was the one. Sorry. And because I had this in mind, I was like, it got so much hype, and like Skyrim. Actually, this game annoyed me, because as it got released, like Skyrim. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I hear Skyrim one more time. And yeah, then I actually in 2016 Steam sale, I picked the game up and I started playing it, and like the first 2 hours were like so, it blew me away because I never had so much freedom in a game before. It felt so weird. You see this village and you can just go there and talk to the people. And for example, what is actually funny is like the own stories you create. For example, the good old elf Fandal, that is one you meet in Riverwood
Right.
at the beginning. He was the whole journey with me. I never dismissed him. Fandal was on the whole journey from Riverwood till the end, and through the DLCs he was with me.
Yeah.
And every time he died, reload.
And then there are other of
Yeah.
us who arrange for him to die, but before we even leave the Riverwood. Ugh, can't say that word.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like actually in my second playthrough, he died at the beginning because I was killing him because I sided with Sven, the other guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but well, and then Fallout 4 was my first Fallout game on my second Bethesda game, and I enjoyed it a lot actually. And
Well, I would hope so if you're building complicated mods like
Yeah.
NukaWorld Plus and Miami with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but like a lot of people were like talking about how awful Fallout 4 is and that it isn't RPG anymore. And after I played Fallout 3 and New Vegas, I kind of understand it. But what I actually recognize for myself is like less talking, more actions, because Bethesda was like doing a much smaller dialogue system because you could only have those 4 choices, and one was no and the other 3 were almost yes. And I mean, I can understand it, but what I recognized, even if you say yes or if you say no and you get the quest, depending on what you do in the quest, it changes. So you still have the RPG elements in the way how you act, not what you're gonna say.
Right.
And in Fallout New Vegas, it's more about what you say to others.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the way I can understand that people were disappointed. But since Fallout 4 was my first Fallout game, I was amazed by this game, and it was one of the greatest experience I had back in the day.
I'm a huge fan of Fallout 4. I'm not on the side against it that it lost. I know it did lose certain parts of RPG, but you got to figure they probably had to make that design call of like it's going to cost us a fortune to have this many variations of the player dialogue done. So they had to limit themselves in some way, and so that was the trade-off. It was like, all right, we'll do less dialogue choices, but we'll try the player voiced and see how that feels. And I think that if you look at, it's hard to tell because you look at sales figures, and Fallout 4 was one of their best-selling games ever. But sales figures don't necessarily mean that game was good. It means that the last game was good because that's people were remembering their experience from the previous game and buying it. But you also have to know that if Fallout 4 exceeded the sales of Fallout 3 in New Vegas, then obviously a lot of those are new players. So Fallout 4 was their first experience. So I don't believe that the majority were disappointed by Fallout 4's dialogue system. I think it was the old school players. There were a lot of them that were disappointed, but I think most new players, that's just their only experience with Fallout, so they don't know any different, and so I don't think those players complain about that.
I mean, the funny part on this is also that I came from the Ubisoft community before, and the Ubisoft community is complaining all the time, like, this game is feeling the same as the game before.
Yeah.
I want something new. And at Bethesda, it's actually like the other way around. This game is too different. I can't play this anymore. That isn't Fallout anymore. And that's actually funny to see.
Yeah, I don't think you can ever. I mean, you can never satisfy everybody. Like you gotta.
Yeah.
You just gotta pick an. I don't know what the like. There's
just
gotta
what
be a
I
weird.
recognized.
Yeah, it's gotta be a weird conversation they have at these game companies though of like, when is it enough people that we're satisfying? You know what I mean? Like, is it 10 million? Is it 50 million? Like, because you're never going to satisfy everyone in the world. So then, like, how many people do you aim to satisfy?
Yeah, I mean, that the majority enjoys Fallout 4. You see that like Fallout Miami is so popular and hit over 1 million views, even if the announced trailer was like 3 4 years after the 3 years after the release of Fallout 4, which shows to me, or shows in general, that yeah, it is actually still a relevant game and the community is still there.
Yeah. Well,
And it's just like the people you recognized, or the people that are like complaining a lot, that are the people you recognize the most.
yeah, we say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. In the U.S. I'm sure you have a similar saying there. But that's unfortunate. And I don't think that represents the majority opinion. Like you said, you've got millions of people watching the Fallout Miami trailer, so there's a lot of people who are hyped up for an expansion to Fallout 4. And I think you guys are doing something that I think is really smart. Also, is you guys are planning on doing it without the script extender, right? So that you can actually release on Bethesda.net.
Actually, we wanted to do this, but recently, like 2 days ago, we were facing huge problems in the writing department.
Okay.
And we had a vote, and actually it seems like we are going to use script extender. I was actually against it, since I'm a huge fan of not using script extender. But it seems like actually we are changing to use script extender, to use extended dialogue interface.
Oh, interesting. That's a big change. It definitely changes the options you can have. I'm with you on the lack of script extender for a couple of reasons. One is it lets me, it kind of puts a box around things, so I have to get creative with my solutions. Because one of the things with script extender is it can open up the door for unlimited feature creep, because once you use that, there are no limitations anymore. You can, anything you're willing to figure out, you can do, because you can just go into C# or C++ or whatever and create a new DLL, make it do whatever you want. So then, like, it's kind of opening Pandora's box. The other side of that is I think that people shouldn't underestimate how many people actually use Bethesda.net, and how many people who use Nexus or ModDB don't use the script extender. I think it's a substantial number of audience members you lose out on by going to script extender.
I mean, one thing I brought up was like using script extender is like hosting the white flag. Like to say, I give up. Because in my opinion, it's actually fun to push the basic engine to its limits and figure out ways how you bring stuff to work even without script extender. For example, for the reputation system, we had to find a way to make a proper interface without the abilities of script extender before. And what I created was like completely new.
Okay.
What I did was like to say we have the opportunity to show like perk stuff. For example, the well-rested perk. If you rest well, then you have this perk animation.
Yeah.
In your And what my idea was then, let's create SWF for each faction, and if you have a faction reputation rank up, then you get this like at the spot where the well-rested perk is, this animation for the faction with the with the sentence, you ranked up in faction whatever with your reputation, which actually is like super nice because it's fitting to Fallout 4, and also it keeps the flow, because for example the Fallout 4 New Vegas team is like keeping this message boxes, this huge message boxes, and I didn't like the idea of message boxes because it stops the flow of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I really was glad to find this as an like workaround that was even better than Fallout New Vegas, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really like those things, the little perk animations. I actually wish we would do more of them. But our guy who does those animations is a very busy guy, so I try. It's Ruined World, so I try not to bug him for them too often. But we've done that for a couple things as well. It's a great way to indicate stuff to the player. It feels natural in the game because they're used to seeing it, and it looks really cool, especially if you get good animator on it.
Yeah, we actually have great animators.
Well, that's
they
fantastic.
are doing an awesome job. and they are looking so beautiful.
That's
And that
such a
makes
rare
it feel even
skill
better.
in the community is animation.
Yeah.
So like
But that's also a thing because Adobe is really expensive.
yeah.
You don't have too much people who are able to afford it
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and
the
have the
software is
skill.
expensive, and then not only that, but
Mm.
it's such a high paying skill that if you're good
Yeah.
enough at it, you probably don't need to be investing your free time in doing free projects when you can get paid a lot of money to do it for a
Yeah,
living.
that's the point. Yeah. But actually, that is something I recognize in Fallout 76 as well, and that is something I have to mention right now. The community of Bethesda is one of the nicest and best I've ever experienced, because everyone before Fallout 76 got released was like, yeah, only griefers, people will shoot each other and destroy other houses. And that was actually true for the first week, but after some time passed and all the casual players were gone, um, only the hardcore community was remaining, and there are so awesome and funny people. That's incredible. There was, for example, I read an article about this guy who was like building a maze with a tame deathclaw in it, and then he told other people's like if they go there they can find prizes and stuff, and then he locked them up in there and then they were there with the deathclaw. That was so hilarious. And actually, what I also saw by myself while playing Fallout 76, that near the entrance there were like a group of players, they were like level 250 or anything, who set up like what they called a assist help camp for newcomers,
Okay.
and then they were like just offering ammunition and weapons for low level people for free,
Oh, awesome.
and set up training parcours where they could like practicing shooting and stuff. That was so awesome as I encountered this.
Doesn't it make you think maybe it was secretly Bethesda's strategy? They're like, if we make the launch really crappy, then all the annoying players will go away, and only our best fans will stick around.
Yeah. Yeah, that could actually be one of their ideas. But yeah, that's actually, I mean, the idea they had to say every human is a player, and that the players are the content, is actually working in some kind.
Mm.
That makes me actually glad to see that. Yeah,
One of the things that
everything
I would
does.
love to see in that regard is if they, and this is one of the things I'm hoping with private servers, is we can add some permanence. Like the guys who set up stuff like that, if they could set it up and then it would always be there. So that way when other people
Yeah.
log in, because
Even if
otherwise
he leaves, yeah.
it's only there while those guys are online, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it would be really like they have
But
the vendor system now. It'd be really cool if you could set up shops right in front of the vault and be like, set the prices super low and be like, hey, it's it's welcome gear for you guys to just snag.
yeah, in general, I would love it if on private servers things in general would be permanent. For example, if you were to place and looted it, that it is still looted,
Yeah.
or the enemies they are still cleared and killed. And what also would be a great thing for with private servers would be actually that you could have RPG servers, because I would imagine that would be a huge thing in the community of Bethesda.
Oh
And
yeah,
it
actual
could
RP
be
servers
turned
where
out
people
great.
are role playing their
Yeah.
characters and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be a huge thing for Bethesda games. Because I remember it was always fun to, whenever I'd get into an MMO, I would generally put a character on every type of server and play around and just get a feel. And the RP servers were a way different experience than the normal servers.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, what I actually do with Skyrim and Fallout as well, in every game of Bethesda, is like the first playthrough is just like I just play the game, like I don't think anything, and then the second and third is like that I build around the story of this character and play them in a certain way and restrict them or restrict myself. So yeah, for example, my third character, my Institute character in Fallout 4, um, was only about sneaking, and it actually felt really different. It was like more feeling like playing Dishonored, since I used some mods that adjust the movement and stuff. And yeah, that's actually like really nice to play the same game in a completely different way, gameplay wise.
Yeah, I've just started doing that for the first
Missions.
time, of like really restricting myself, and I love it.
Yeah.
You get to change the feel of the game, and then you get to make use of things that you might have ignored otherwise because they feel thematic for your character.
Yeah, also there are some functions I never knew before. For example, the Sandman perk. I never used it before, and then as I first got it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome!"
Yeah. Yeah, I used so few of the perks, and then somebody, Wood Fuzzy, who's one of our testers, he created a save where you just start where he like used console commands to give you all the perks, and I use that for testing now. And now I'm like finding all these activation buttons. I'm like, well, what is this? Like, there's so many perks that add new gameplay elements I had no idea about.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really cool.
yeah, and that is what I said before. It's like that some people are underestimating the um, perk system of Fallout 4 and the roleplay opportunities you have in the game, because they are on the second look more than you would think at the beginning.
Oh, I
In
agree.
my opinion.
I would also say and I've been harping on this for a while now, is Bethesda doesn't get credit for how deep most of the gameplay systems they've created are, even for their DLCs. Like, the amount of work they put into, say for example, Automatron is nuts. The amount that NukaWorld is integrated into the Commonwealth is crazy. Like, I had no idea how much effort they put into making it feel like, you slowly convert the Commonwealth into Raider territory.
Yeah, that's actually because with my first character I was missing the whole DLC out completely, because I was just doing open season and then it was over for me. But I actually created then a second character who was then like more madman, and he was then siding with the disciples and the pack. And then I first recognized like how deep this settlement system is, like that you have also capture vessels, and yeah, that was insane. What I actually did for this playthrough was just like messing around with my ini, because if you go into, I don't remember which ini it was, you can disable essential and protected characters completely,
Oh, really?
because you can just so make them mortal as well. And then I could like just get every single settlement, and was even able to kill Preston Garvey. And what I was doing then was like capturing the whole Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And that was also, I think, I built those settlements up with sim settlements,
Okay.
like applying them so they had their houses and stuff,
Yeah.
and built walls around the settlements, and built them up really heavily while I was doing the main game. And then, as I said, with the raiders, I had so much claim those settlements, because they were like fortresses and stuff, and it was so fun. And then the last settlement I captured was then with Preston Garvey, who died in an epic fight
Nice.
with the sole survivor.
That the way you just described playing is exactly how our last expansion came to be, because we were experimenting with. So we've had 3 expansions for Sim Settlements, and the second one was Rise of the Commonwealth, which is where like the settlements could build themselves.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make it so that they could build at the beginning of the game. And once we did that, and then I started playing with the NukaWorld stuff, and I was like, oh, this is way more fun to do NukaWorld when the cities are already built up. So yeah, I think the way you just described is exactly the way I ended up playing to come to Conqueror. So I think you would greatly appreciate Conqueror.
I mean, the expansions I played of Sim Settlements are Industrial Revolution. I love this one so much, and Rise of the Commonwealth as well. But the new one, if there's a new one, I didn't.
Yeah, the new one is Conqueror, and it does that. It basically pre-builds all the settlements so that way, and then it adds a raider quest line so that you can play as a raider without having to go to NukaWorld. And it was the whole thing came together because of the experience you just described. It's so much fun to attack the settlements when they're fortresses.
Then I should actually check it out and download it for my play folder.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how was I allowed to miss? How dare I? How dare I?
Yeah, I think you'll get a kick out of
Yeah.
it if you enjoy the raider play. But it's a lot of fun to take down the fortresses like that. Really appreciate that. And I'm really curious how, because I have barely touched NukaWorld content. Like we barely integrated at all with that. Mostly because I tend to I don't like using the DLCs as requirements for the mods because I know there's still a lot of people who don't have the DLC. Although I'm starting to feel like at this late in the game, like it's been, what'd you just say? It's been what, 4 years, almost 3, 4 years. When did it come out? 2015, Fallout 4?
2015.
Yeah, so almost 4 years. So it's like at this point, if you're still playing Fallout, why haven't you bought the DLC? Because it's probably only like $15 or $20 by now. I'd imagine they've reduced the price.
I don't know what could be also like. I mean, the people who are still playing Fallout 4 should have the DLCs. The people who are new to Fallout 4, okay, that's reliable.
Yeah.
I guess.
I guess it
But,
also could be there are some people who object to them outright. Like I know some people who are just like, I refuse to ever buy a DLC because I think it's bad practice by the company, which that's a fair argument. Because you can.
Well, but
It sometimes does
that's
seem
actually-
like when you see DLC announced for some games, it looks like you guys clearly wanted that in the base game and you just cut it for DLC. Like I don't think necessarily Bethesda does that, but some content you look at it and you're like, that should have been in the game originally.
I mean, actually, if you look at all the scripts that came with the new DLCs, they were actually integrating really heavily new systems. For example, with the constructions workshop, there are so many new heavy and long scripts that were integrated in this game, and there is no way they could have cut that out before. And I actually have to say, I really like Creation Club is another thing that's just like completely overpriced stuff in my opinion. But back in the day, the DLCs were actually fair for their price in my opinion.
Yeah. The increase in price for microtransactions is pretty nuts. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why it keeps going up like that. It seems crazy.
I mean, actually, like, if I think, I got the season pass back in the day for 29.99 euros.
Yeah.
Before they increased the price, and I was like so blown away from the amount of content I got for this money. But Creation Club, you also get blown away for the content you get, but like in a negative way. You pay like 10 euros or 15 euros for one quest.
Right.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, that's so weird. Like, it's such a bad value proposition. But the I think people are always comparing it to the previous thing, and I don't know why they keep doing it like that.
I mean, actually, Fallout 3, the DLCs, there were some good ones, but for example, I forgot the names, but there were some DLCs that were just boring since you were just running and shooting everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Operation Anchorage.
Yeah.
This DLC was so boring in my opinion because it was focused on the worst systems of Fallout 3, the shooting mechanic.
Right.
And that was actually like where I said, guys, you can't tell me that you would prefer this over like a Walltech Workshop, which actually has like something new to it. Where I was like, no way, that's Fallout 3's DLCs were all better than Fallout 4's. On Fallout New Vegas, where you have like a difficulty for which DLC was it? However, this difficulty was like made the game for me almost unplayable because you got like no chance to fight those enemies. I unfortunately forgot the name, but maybe you know from
the Sierra Madre one. That one was really tough with with the fog or whatever it was.
Yeah, probably that was just like too much in my opinion. in game difficulty. And also in to come back to Fallout 3 was like that every single DLC was like mostly the same. You're going somewhere, you lose all your stuff,
Right.
and then you have like 1-2 hours of gameplay, and that's it. You get at the end all your stuff back, and then you are back in the capital wasteland.
Yeah, I wasn't a
I
fan of
don't
that
know if
design at
that
all. I
is
much prefer. I really like the way they did NukaWorld and Far Harbor, where
yeah.
you just get to go visit those places, do some quests and stuff. I also appreciate that, at least with, I don't know how much they did with Far Harbor. I haven't looked into it, but NukaWorld, they actually integrate some of the content back to the Commonwealth, which I think that's the way they really need to do DLC, in my opinion, is make it all feel like it's one game world.
Yeah, that's true. But what I love on Far Harbor, it expanded the story of my favorite character in the game, Nick Valentine.
Yeah.
Nick Valentine is, in my opinion, the brightest example for awesome writing in Fallout 4. Because it's such a deep and interesting character, and with the DLC of Far Harbor, it got even better, the personality of him. And it was so much enjoyable. I actually played the whole DLC Far Harbor in one night.
Oh my god.
Because, yeah,
wow.
it was. I actually was, first of all, so hyped for the first DLC because I enjoyed the main game so much, and as Far Harbor was out, I was enjoying the story so much I couldn't stop playing.
Wow.
And then after it was over, I was like, oh my gosh, that was so awesome. Now I go sleep.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think that's pretty. I think most people agree with that. Far Harbor is some of the best writing Bethesda's done in a long time. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
And would love to see more of that. But I liked what like NukaWorlds was kind of bland. Like you essentially the way they did that. It's very impressive technically though. And I love the fact that they integrated it back with the world. I would like to, if they combine those two things, like epic story plus have it have an impact back on the main game world. I think if you combine those two things, you could have a pretty insanely epic DLC, which is kind of what I'm a little hopeful that you guys are leaning toward with Miami, because I know yours is one of the few mega mods where your plan is to allow, unless this has changed, and maybe you can answer this, where you're allowed to visit Miami from the Commonwealth and then go back to the Commonwealth. Is that still the plan?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. You will play as a sole survivor in Miami as well, and you will expand the adventures of the sole survivor. That's like a part, even if we're using script extended dialogue interface, so it will slightly be different compared to the main game, but that's like because our writing is really fleshed out and deep, and it wouldn't work well with a voice protagonist, so we felt kind of forced to go this way.
But it's still going to be exciting that you get to go back, because then basically you get to take your character and continue to live on with them, which is
right. That is one of the main philosophy of Miami as well, and what's also a thing, or what is really important to us, as I mentioned before, for the reputation system, that we still keep the spirit of Fallout 4, like that we designing the interfaces for Fallout Miami in a way we would imagine they would work in Fallout 4. And so even if we're using script extender and extended dialogue interface, the rest will be really Fallout 4 like, and
so it can feel like one mostly continuous experience where you're that's awesome. I agree with that philosophy a lot. I'd love to do that myself. It's very difficult though. It's like to add new gameplay and stuff is with the restrictions, especially with the interface, like you've said. You have to get very creative with solutions to that, like popping up little perk boys or limiting things to a way that they can make sense in the messages. But it's a challenge.
I mean, and it's a challenge that makes fun, and that was like, figuring out to solve things is the most fun part of programming in general. So it's definitely a challenge. I will be up for the future as well, and I'm excited to see what we will bring up.
Yeah. Is there anything outside? So you had mentioned you did systems for Reputation and for Prison. Are there any other crazy game systems you're getting to design for Miami? Like maybe that you haven't started yet or anything that you can talk
I
about?
mean, since yeah, what I can talk about this is we first cut it out because we were not sure if we're using script extender, but what we're actually recreating is an old racing game
Aha.
where you had to drive or like kill. In Germany, it was censored, so in Germany, the game was about killing zombies with your car.
Okay.
But I think in the original game, you just drove over people, and yeah, you will actually be in a car,
Okay.
and then you will drive in it and have to kill so many ghouls as possible to receive points and rewards that will be a part of a faction as well. And if we're using script extender, that will be totally possible because it's already finished by one of our programmers.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, little stuff like that
Then
is awesome to break up the pace of things in games like that, like this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Then, as I mentioned, reputation system is a thing
yeah.
for certain factions. And a crime system that's based on Skyrim's one but heavily reimagined to fit more to the Miami style and to the more civilized style the faction is cultured and working. So yeah, that are a few examples, but I'm sure there will be more. We're working on the slaver system,
Yeah.
for example, is also a thing. Yeah. I mean, in general, I would say for every announced faction, you can expect at least one own system for them.
Oh, that's great. So you have lots of exciting puzzles to solve still in your development side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I have.
I mean, it's also that we're working on unique quests, like one quest should be completely different to another one. We are totally not up for like collect this, collect 100 of this.
Yeah.
That's not the way that will work.
Yeah, it's such a that's something we've had lots of discussions with on our writing team of how when you look at most video games, it's almost every quest if you break it down far enough tends to be travel here and then either kill or collect, and like that is most quests in all video games are like that, and it's hard to break free of that trope.
Yeah. But that's actually also something I aim for NukaWorld Plus because, as I mentioned before, I want to bring in a quest line as well for each faction and for the free raider faction. So it will work like this: the faction quest, like for Minuteman Brotherhood, will be focused on rebuilding the park, cleaning it up, because it doesn't make sense if the Minutemen are in Nukatown, USA, and there will be still dismembered body parts. So it's
Right.
also not getting cleared immediately. The player actually has to finish quests so the park gets rebuilt slowly. For example, one quest I finished recently was like the player has to find a proper spot for a graveyard and then write a speech together with the faction leader, so the traders are able to express their losses and sadness
Oh man, that's deep.
well. Yeah. And yeah. And then there are the raider quest lines that are also free, like there will be contain one quest for each raider faction in which you will have to defeat the new leader. But it's not just like going into a new dungeon and kill everything. It's actually like I mean, I can bring up an example because, yeah, there is like one character, I won't spoil his name because that's actually a huge part of the story, but
Okay.
he's actually going to take revenge on the player since the player killed a really precious person in his life while the events of open season. Because what I thought is like, you think as a player in open season you are doing a good thing because you kill all those raiders and end. And what I actually try to do with that is like bring a deep touch into it. So the player has to reimagine if the stuff he's doing and if killing just is the right thing to do, even if you talk about raiders or anything.
Right.
And so yeah, that is also something I'm working on and I have a lot of fun with.
That's awesome. Well, when do you have your next update planned for that?
Actually, I announced it that I will release the stabilized version next month at latest, but I'm pretty confident that I get it finished earlier because I have to fix just like 1 or 2 bugs and then it's ready for release.
Yeah.
But it won't contain the new quest lines and stuff that will be then for updates that is further in the future because it takes a lot of time to implement those stuff. And I just wanna bring before I bring this huge update with the quest lines just a stable version which is working much smoother and better before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a totally
But
reasonable plan. So with your quests, are you doing them voiced and whatnot?
they will be with a voice protagonist. The way it will work is most probably like America Rising, A Tale of Enclave, or here, how was the mod called? I think Tales of the Commonwealth.
Right.
Like that, the subtitles are slightly different to what the player is saying, but it is kinda matching and fitting with each other.
Okay, I gotcha. So you use
Yeah.
a lot of those mods tend to use they'll lean more on the more vague statements by the player
Yeah.
instead of the specific stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
But yeah, and but the next update that will coming out like I think this weekend will also contain the system that the player can be enslaved. So
And they have to find a way to get free. Yeah.
yeah, he as I said, you actually can kill the new overboss or you have enough intelligence to disarm the shock collar by yourself. And what is actually working as well, if you disarmed it and it didn't break, because that can happen. If you try to disarm it and you are successful, it can break or it can be reusable. And if it's reusable, you can sneak on other actors and put it on. And if they leave NukaWorld or you are in the Commonwealth and sneak on your enemy, he's like fucked because boom.
Yeah. Insta bomb. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds awesome. I love that you're doing that kind of integration with it and just fleshing it out more. Because I think NukaWorld is one of the ones where it's like a really impressive world space, but it feels kind of empty and like there's not enough depth. There's not enough depth to it.
That was actually the idea I got behind the shock collar, was like to force the player to explore NukaWorld, because he can't leave NukaWorld and he has to find stuff in NukaWorld itself to be strong enough to defeat the new overboss.
Right, because they're going to take away
And
all your
you
gear
can-
and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you kill the overboss, you get back your old equipment, of course.
Sure.
But before you are able to do that, like if you're level 30 or so, then you won't be able to run at him and just punch him in the face and kill him. That will not happen.
Right.
That will not happen. Since I also blocked some ways to the overboss, so you actually have to go through certain paths, and they are heavily guarded. Like I don't like put like hundreds of raiders so they just kill you. That's not the way it works. What I was more working on is kind of using a few traps like mines and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the fact that all your gear is taken away makes it a lot harder
Yeah.
to yeah, reclaim the park.
What's interesting about this project is with the vanilla game, it tends to be that most of us who are doing quest mods or anything in the vanilla space, we in like the Commonwealth area, we tend to be very careful about what we're willing to touch because we don't want to be incompatible with a bunch of other mods. But in the case of yours, most of the story mods happen in the Commonwealth or in their own spaces. So even if you're doing like edits to the world, like you're not really competing with other mods because nobody else is. There's like one
Yep.
other mod that kind of is in this space, but I think they did it all with scripts. There's the one where it's like Minutemen can take back NukaWorld, but they're not doing anything at the depth you're talking. So you pretty much have this whole world space to play with because nobody else has bothered to do so.
Yeah, that's also a point. I chose NukaWorld because first, yeah, because the reason I started the project was I was waiting for someone to do that, but no one did it. And I said like, okay, maybe you have the ability, so why aren't you doing it by yourself? And then I started the project, and yeah, that's actually the reason because there aren't so many mods for NukaWorld.
Yeah, that's actually really awesome. You get to play in this really cool playground
Yeah.
that has a lot of potential and expand on it. So I highly recommend people check this out. It looks. I haven't played it myself yet. I've seen videos of it and it looks very impressive. And obviously, you're talented enough to get picked up as a lead programmer for a mod as big and as exciting as Miami. You must know what you're doing to some extent. So,
Yeah, thank you.
so it sounds like
Yeah.
we should all keep an eye out for your next update, which might be as soon as this coming weekend.
Yeah, it should be done till this point, and I would rather you to wait for that update because I enhanced it a lot. What I also was doing is like the way attacks work. I reworked that completely. Like if you play it, you won't feel any difference, but the scripts that are in the background are less heavier, are working much better. And I can bring up an example for performance.
Okay.
Before I played my mod with testing, I had while an assault was currently there like 25 FPS or 30 FPS, and now I actually have 60 FPS the whole time.
Wow. Now, are you talking
Doesn't
about
matter.
the assault system where the people attack Nuka Town, or are you talking about?
Yeah,
Okay, okay. I
yeah,
was wondering if you were talking
Nukatown, yeah.
about the assaults in the Commonwealth. It's like, oh, we might have touched some
No,
similar
no, no,
ground
no,
then.
no, no, no. I didn't touch this for now. That's also a plan I have. I can talk about this after I finished. My current point is yeah, performance is increased heavily. I also made it more balanced because before um, an infinite amount of raiders could spawn. Like you could have 30 raiders, 35 raiders, and I put the cap on 20. So you have actually to kill raiders so the next wave can spawn.
Sure.
So it is the first thing, it saves performance. The second thing is it saves the balance because if there are too much raiders, your chosen faction has no chance and they get just
You get wrecked.
ripped off completely.
Yeah. Because the AI can get
And
overwhelmed very
yeah,
easily.
yeah. So the cap of 20 raiders is also a great improvement for the balance, as I recognize.
Sure. Yeah, we also
And
ran
yeah,
into with the Conqueror system. We ran into an issue with the game has a cap on the number of actors in the loaded zone whose AI actually functions. So if you break more than I believe it's 60 outside and 45 on an interior, like if
yeah,
more than that NPCs are in the space, some of them will just stand there and do nothing.
yeah. I recognize that by myself. That was the reason I was ripping off the numbers like heavily
Yeah.
because, as I said before, you could have like 40 raiders at the same time. And what I also did is actually fixing a lot of bugs made by Bethesda. For example, I found some spots in Nukatown USA where you could fall through the ground.
Oh, that's
I
fun.
didn't know that before, but yeah, well, I fixed them as far I found them, and yeah, then I heavily reworked AI packages so they work more smoothly and are looking better. For example, what I did now is you either can win an assault by killing 3 assault leaders or by reaching the wave cap, which is 15.
Okay.
And if you kill the 3 assault leaders, all other raiders are running away in terror and scream, which is just so awesome. What I also added is like that your faction is like starting idling, like that they start to do jumping and just are happy that they
Oh
won the
yeah, like the
assault.
little celebratory
Yeah,
animation. Yeah,
yeah,
that's great.
yeah,
I
yeah. And
love
the
that
other way
the flea
around.
package is so funny because everybody has
Yeah,
like all the voice actors did a couple of lines where they're just screaming like little girls running away from.
yeah,
It's so funny.
yeah, yeah. And what I also added, like if the raiders are conquering now NukaWorld, as I said, if the health gets below 50%, the player surrenders by get on the kneel and raise on the hands. And what I wanted to add this animation to your chosen faction members as well, so that
Yes, everybody
everyone
else
is like
surrenders.
surrendering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. Little touches like
yeah,
that really make the game feel amazing when you can pull off stuff like that.
yeah. And actually, what I'm working currently the most of the time, because I want to make it feel like vanilla, is flashing out tutorial messages and stuff. Also because I got a lot of questions to the mod and the same questions over and over again. So I set up a lot of tutorial messages that show up and explain everything. For example, if an assault starts, then this tutorial messages will start to show up, like you didn't you d- you didn't thought the raiders will surrender, did you? And then explanation how it works, how you what are the consequences if you lose, what are the consequences if you win. And yeah, what I also added for this update is a little bit quality of life. For example, the traders just loot all the bodies for you
Oh, nice.
from the assaults,
Yeah.
and put it in your overboss chest, for example. Because I recognize you lose a lot of ammunition and stuff, and I thought it's a nice way to balance it, that all the NPCs you killed get looted and the stuff is in your overboss chest.
No, that's a great idea because it can be really frustrating to have to go through and loot. That's a common request I've got on Conqueror right now, is to come up with a system to auto loot all the bodies, because not only do you lose the guys on your faction side, but then all the enemies you're killing, and it's like when you're done there's like 60 bodies and it's like, I don't want to loot all those, it takes too much time.
Yeah. Yeah, and even like as I said, I mean the wave cap is 15 and you have 5 raiders per wave.
Yeah.
So do some quick maths and then you will recognize that the number is quite huge. Like at 75 raiders in total, you could encounter and have fun with looting.
Yeah.
So I just was like, okay, just move. Yeah.
Move it on
But
for you.
what was also important to me to make it so it has to make sense in lore. So what I was setting actually up just for this is loading screens which explain, the traders loot the bodies after you won the assault. And also you see the bodies lying on the ground because I added 2 timers. The first timer is like when the bodies get looted, and the second timer is then to disable them. So
Okay.
they
So
first get
you
looted
added the
and then they
you added your own
fucking
cleanup code.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's because the bodies
That's
can
also
get
because
stuck,
the
and once
questions.
you start playing with aliases, the bodies can get stuck. Even I
Yeah.
found out that if you apply like a name to them, then even if it's just like the apply to ref where it doesn't keep them in the alias, those bodies will stick around forever until you remove that name from them, which is very strange.
Yeah, but I also had to do this since my quests are looping by itself,
Mm-hmm.
because you can encounter assaults, so often you want.
Yeah.
And so I had to find a way that it's looping properly, and that was the way I go with that. I disable all, reset all, and then the quest restarts.
Sure. Huh. So it sounds like you've got a lot of depth in there. I really love the sound of the stuff you've got coming for your future updates with the quests and stuff. Because I love new quests, and especially if when people use hold themselves to high standards with the voice actors. We've been very fortunate on the quests we've done that our voice talent has done really, really great work, so that it feels like it belongs in the game, and it just adds so much more life to the game and lets you just keep playing. And so I'm hoping you will have the same good fortune we have in that. It seems like there's a lot of talented voice actors out there willing to do work for Fallout 4.
I mean, I'm always open for new people who are offering help, but what can also say is like the advantage in working in huge projects like Fallout Miami or Bay and Skyrim is you can just rip off some people off there and say, hey, could you help me with that?
Yeah. You wanna?
And they are mostly like saying, yes, of course I can do that. So I'm really confident that I will be able to find great voice actors, since we are recruiting voice actors for Fallout Miami, and there are some really talented voice actors, and I guess if I would ask them, they would say yes and help me with my project as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. So we can look forward to some really badass quest content out of you too then.
Yeah. Yeah, and also what I can say is, since I'm also playing piano since 8 years, I set up a new radio station for the traders that's run by the traders.
Okay.
And the theme is actually like of the songs, like for example Bella Ciao, because it was a song fighting fascism.
Okay.
And I keep this kind of theme for the radio station. It's piano music only, but I thought it's also fitting to the traders, since they are not really having strong infrastructure or anything, so they have more an improvised radio station that's run by one of the ex-slaves.
Okay, cool. Are you doing the DJ thing?
No, I will find a voice actor for this.
Oh no, I know you wouldn't do it. I'm saying, are you gonna have like a DJ that talks and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
That's actually also a part of the first main quest, because the player can decide if he wants to have a DJ or not. Because, for example, I know a lot of people, and I like DJs in Fallout.
Yeah.
But for example, my best friend, he's annoying me all the time. So what I was doing is also like creating a circled quest, in which after you finish the first main quest here, you can decide, do I want to have a DJ or not?
Okay.
That new random quest can show up, which can be repeated. That's where a trader says like, hey, we have this radio station that is nice, but this DJ, he's so annoying, and could you please get rid of him? And then you can do this, or you can say no. But if you do this, then at some point, like in-game week later or so, another trader could show up. Then, this music, we should have some news, so you can like change that every time.
So you're gonna have multiple DJs available so that they can choose between?
No, it's one DJ, but he can
get fired.
Fired and in again, because he's like the only guy who's willing to do that. But the first main quest will be about setting up a radio station, and
that's awesome. I love the radio stations in Fallout. That was one of the things that really sold me on Bethesda. So I'm one of the players who has been around Fallout since it came out back in the day, And I was definitely an idiot in the camp of like, oh, it's never going to work in 3D. That's just going against the spirit. Then after I played it, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. But one of the best features I think they added was the radio station with the DJ. It's so cool to have them like responding to the stuff you're doing. And
Free dog.
it's great. Yeah, Free Dog. Loved it. I love those. And I've always wanted to have one in our mods to comment on our quest stuff, but it's such a massive project. Like there's so much stuff that goes into doing it. So I hope I wish you luck in that project.
Yeah, I mean the great thing is the world space is there, so it just needs quests. And I already found a level designer who offered me help for creating new dungeons. So you can also expect 3 new interiors.
Sweet.
That are that are basically tied to the main quest with the raiders, where you have to destroy them finally. But for example, the radio station is a new little interior as well, and
Awesome.
And the thing with the radio station is, as you mentioned it before, with the thing that the DJ responds to the things you do. That is actually the reason I created my own radio station with, if the player wants it, a DJ, because I want to keep this, because like Red Eye was doing that as well for the raiders.
Yeah.
And if you kick them out, you don't have it in any way, because Travis isn't saying anything about NukaWorld after you killed all raiders.
Right.
As far I remember. So, you will then have your own radio station for NukaWorld with a DJ who responds to the actions you will do within my main quest.
I thought Red Eye was hilarious. I thought that was a really well written radio guy.
Yeah, and I actually liked his music, to be honest, because it was completely different. It was so different to Diamond Cities and in general to the Fallout music.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a crazy change of pace, and it kind of opened the door to some other genres to be considered technically lore friendly in that regard too.
Yeah,
which is cool. But I just thought the character they did for him was really funny. But I know a lot of people disliked him vehemently. So you offering an alternative, especially for the people who like to go into NukaWorld and just wipe everyone out, like it sounds like your trader side will be a nice change of pace for those folks.
Yeah, as I said, NukaWorld Plus will, for now, and first off, I'm completely focusing on good player content. So NukaWorld is getting, exciting for good players as well. But after I finish this, I will do one more thing for the bad guys. And that was something that bothered me so much, that you couldn't do this in the NukaWorld DLC, because at some point Gage mentions like, we were kicking ass so hard in the Commonwealth, Diamond City should recognize us as well now. And after you reach this point, I want to continue this with one more quest where you have to capture and enslave Diamond City.
That's awesome. That's one of the things that's on our dream list for Conqueror's quest line, but I don't know if we'll ever get to it because we have so much to do. Because that would just be so much fun to subjugate them.
I mean, that is something really futurized. As I said first, I have enough to do with Miami and finishing the good guy stuff, but that's something I have in mind to do for the bad guys as well.
That's awesome. So with the good guy stuff in there, speaking of that, do you add, or I've seen one other mod that does this in a pretty big way. Do you add any more settlements? I know you said you're a big fan of the settlement system. Do you add more settlements to NukaWorld, or is that on your to-do list?
No, I won't add new settlements. With good guy stuff, I mainly mean quests for a good guy.
Sure.
That's the reason I implement a new main quest for good factions.
Okay.
And it's more like, you could more compare like the settlement system in Assassin's Creed 3, because that's actually how it works. You do a main quest and that will have an impact of Nukatown USA. For example, I mentioned this quest where you have to set up a graveyard
Mm-hmm.
and writing the speech. And after you finish this quest, all dismembered bodies will be gone
Yeah.
because these people got buried on the graveyard.
Right. So you're more doing quests to allow the city to progress itself and become more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that
Yeah.
method too. I actually am a big fan of that. I like that they did that in older games. I like both.
Yeah.
I like the mix of what Fallout's got where you can do some by hand, but in general, I don't have the patience to do that for 40 settlements. So it's
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and also a thing is what I'm implementing because it bothered me, or like I would say it would make sense because the Soul Survivor already has proven to the Minutemen, to the Brotherhood, to the Institute, to the Railroad that he is the true hero. So it wouldn't make sense. He has to prove himself by claiming the other packs as well, because that is something in the horizon as well, that you will be able to claim Safari Zone for or Galactic Zone for the Minutemen and so on as well.
okay.
The way it's working is like the faction leader sends a squad of his own faction members. Then you're gonna talk to them, and then they will help you with cleaning up the part of the park.
So you're not going in one man army. You'll send in a little death squad of
Yeah.
Brotherhood or Minutemen or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That.
And they will then just On what I also working on currently that is a lot of fun is the upgrade system for Nukatown USA, which is splitted into 3 directions: the quartermaster, the architect, and something I don't wanna say yet.
Okay.
But the quartermaster is like boosting your troops. You can like do like basic training, then they increase their level. You can purchase them advanced weapons and stuff, so better weapons get added to the level lists. The architect is improving the defense of Nukatown USA itself, for example, that you set up turrets at the entrances of Nukatown USA.
Which will make the assaults more
stuff like
manageable.
this. Yeah. And also, for example, because you don't have to be a part of the assaults, you could be in the Commonwealth doing stuff and say, I don't care about Nukatown USA, which could lead that the disciples, or the operators or the pack is claiming the park. However, the way I did this is, at the beginning, you actually have a really low chance to succeed if you're not there, like 25%.
Okay.
But if you purchase more upgrades, for example, the basic training by the quartermaster, it increases your chance that the park is successfully defended even if you're not there.
Okay. Yeah, that's always because that's one of the things that drove people nuts about the workshop defense system is that no matter what, no matter how good you upgrade your defenses, you cap out at about a 50% chance to win when you're not there.
Yeah.
And that was pretty frustrating.
Yeah, actually, I can say I'm not sure if that's the final thing, but I would aim like if you got all upgrades, and I want to make them expensive since NukaWorld is really endgame content and the most players will have a lot of caps.
Right.
So to find the right balance so it hurts the player, and I think if you spend a huge amount of caps, I mean you receive new rewards and caps by itself through the overboss chest,
Right.
just like you get it from the raiders. However, it will be really expensive, but I aim then a cap of 90 or 85% of succeeded defenses, so you don't have to worry at all if you upgraded everything
Right.
in Nukatown USA, because it does make sense to me.
Yeah. You could you'd eventually be able to get it so good that the Raiders would have no chance to take it back.
Yeah.
Or
Also, it's just like if the faction you choose is established and they build up Nukatown to a fortress, then it wouldn't make sense like that you have a low chance
right.
to succeed a defense even if you're not there.
Right.
And also, I thought it's just like at the beginning it should feel like it's a task to defend the park, and at the end it's just like, okay, I do this because I want to do this. Like, it's fun, and it's fun to see the raiders just dying from all those traps and
Yeah.
torrents. So yeah, that is the my main idea behind it.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like a very ambitious project, and it's very cool that you're taking it on because I think it's definitely the most underutilized world space in Fallout 4. Not that there's a ton, because there's basically it's Far Harbor, NukaWorld, and the Mace game world, because Mechanist Lair is actually very fleshed out and small, and then the vault is a workshop, so you don't really have room to build in there. But it would be interesting. I don't know if anybody's doing the same thing with Far Harbor or not, but I think as far as I know, you're the only one really doing something grandiose in NukaWorld.
I mean, the thing with Harbor is like, it doesn't feel like there could be anything really added, to be honest, since it's like, it is more like a linear expansion as far I recognize it. I felt like Far Harbor is more like feeling linear like an Uncharted is, to be honest. So it wouldn't make too much sense to add on this, because it's really complete in itself, if you get what I mean.
It feels very complete. I know there I've heard complaints of a few of the sub factions maybe not being super fleshed out, like the trappers and stuff, where you could maybe add some more stuff for them. But as far as the core storyline and the main locations, it's very well fleshed out. Yeah.
And in NukaWorld, I got more the feeling like there is so many unused potential and space. So yeah.
Here's something I would love to see in NukaWorld. Tell me if you've thought of a way to use these. If there's some sort of mini game that can be added into the rides, so that they maybe you're shooting people as you ride down the coaster or something.
I mean, I planned something to do with the rides, but tied to a main quest, but that's also a great idea. What I actually planned is like do no, I don't want to spoil it.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just curious because it feels like the first time you find out that those are rideable, it's like, what? They actually made these rideable? And then it's like, oh, well, there's no reason to ride them. So I would love if there was some sort of mini game to make it worth it to just do them over and over again, because they're actually really well done too. Like the Galactic Zone one is super impressive.
The Galactic Zone is awesome. Yeah, that's true. But what I try in NukaWorld as well is like to touch so less as possible from the main game, so it is compatible with so much other mods as possible.
Sure. Well, that's why I said you have a unique experience in that, or you have a unique opportunity here in that most mods aren't looking to edit NukaWorld. So if you're the one base mod that puts in enough content and you are editing it, you can get away with it. Like, I think it's harder to do that in the vanilla game Commonwealth, because everybody wants their quest mods to work there. So then if you start tweaking stuff, you're going to be making patches for the rest of your mod experience.
And then compatibly patches and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, and those are awful.
Yeah.
I guess I have one more question for you before we break, because I know we're coming up on we're just past 2 hours now. And I don't want to keep you all night. Is something I like to ask everybody on these big mod projects: what is the plan for Miami with settlements? Because I'm kind of become the settlement guy in Fallout 4, so I got to ask: do you know, is the plan to have settlements in Miami, and if so, are they going to use the vanilla system so that we can anticipate that they will work nicely with the existing workshop system?
Yes. We will contain a few settlements, but it's like the focus is on handcrafted cities and societies, but Miami will contain vanilla working settlements as well.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been.
I mean, it's.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's one of the core systems of the vanilla game, and to get rid of it completely would be just odd, in my opinion.
Well, a lot of people are often asking me, like, will some settlements work in Cascadia and Miami? It's like, I have no idea. Like, got to ask them. But as long as they're using the vanilla system, they should automatically. So that's really cool.
It should work in Miami, I guess.
Obviously not in your big detailed cities, but all these games. I think it was actually the workshop system was a smart way to use some of the little random spaces throughout the game, because they would have, like, for example, like something like Crew Manor. It's got its stuff, it's got a little backstory, and it's got some NPCs you can kill, and then afterward, those spaces all become nothing. So it is cool. It's a cool idea in the Fallout universe to then let the player take them over and build in them.
You actually should see my Spectral Island. I actually built it up as a medieval aged city. Like in the middle is a huge tower where the king is. The sole survivor around it is a little city built with some settlements with all these houses and shops.
Yeah.
And around this are a wall.
Yeah.
And then after this wall, there are like all this agriculture.
Oh, yeah. So you got yourself a little feudal
plots.
kingdom.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, it's been great talking with you. I'm very excited to see where NukaWorld Plus goes. I think it's a very, very cool mod. And I think we're all super hyped to see Miami come to life. I know it's probably still a long ways away because it's a mega project.
Yes.
But it's good to hear that it's in good hands because you clearly I can tell you think a lot like I do with your mod design. So I'm very excited that you're in charge of the coding over there.
That's great to hear. That's actually great to hear from the guy who brought me into Fallout modding. I really appreciate it.
That's really cool. That's really awesome that you came into it like that. And so that said, to everybody out there, if you're considering modding, be like Systo. Go play with my Builder's Toolkit and you'll become a modder.
Yeah. Or if you just have the patience for starting programming, then just come to Fallout Miami because I'm willing to teach some stuff and I have the patience to explain stuff, and all the other programmers are open-minded as well to help out.
Yeah, so go to falloutmiami.com. I think you guys have help wanted up there. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Or join the Sim Settlements too.
Yeah, we've got our board open all the time. But yeah, if anybody's looking to help out with Miami, they can always use more assistance. So go to falloutmiami.com. That's the website, right? I have that right? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, it was great talking with you and was a nice conversation.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing more from you. If you ever want to chat Papyrus, I'm always on Discord.
That's great.
All right, man. Take care.